So, Venerable Steve, are you at LMB?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
yeah, for a few more weeks. We've got the Namgyalma retreat in early July, and then I'm off back to the UK. I think my mum's life is getting more and more difficult, so it'll be good to be back.
Good morning, Venerable Steve.
Hi there.
Hi. I just wanted to check in with you briefly because the screen share on my end is not working today.
Right.
And I'm trying to right now rectify the screen share. But for the meantime, if it does not work, can I send the link for the prayers in the chat? And then you can access it through the chat.
Sure, yeah. Probably we can do without, but
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Great, thank you.
Right. So spend a few moments quietening our minds and then try to get a very clear experience of compassion for the infinite mother sentient beings and loving kindness, bodhicitta. One of my personal favorite verses from Lama Tsongkhapa, which is in his Foundation of All Good Qualities, short Lam Rim prayer. Rani se so longwa jijindu. So just like I'm drowning in the ocean of cyclic existence, just like I'm bogged down, stuck in the quagmire of samsara, cyclic existence. In exactly the same way, all sentient beings are drowning in this ocean of samsaric suffering. So anyway, then seeing this, I take upon myself the responsibility of liberating them. And therefore, I generate the awakening mind, bodhicitta, determined to achieve enlightenment so that I'll be able to really help them. So this is not just saying that, it's not just saying, it is saying, but it's not just saying that if you want to understand the suffering of others, then you look at your own suffering, because they're suffering the same way. It's not just saying that. It's saying something deeper than that. It's saying that we're all suffering together in this ocean. And even though I'm drowning, I'm also going to take on the responsibility of saving all the sentient beings around me who are also drowning. So who would do that normally in real life? Is a nice idea. It's in real life. Just think about the Titanic. You see these movies about the Titanic and how actually when it comes down to it, when you really, it's either you or them, then for the most part, it's like, it's me. I'm going to think of me. I want to save myself. Nice idea, saving everybody else. Letting everybody else have a seat in the, in the lifeboat. I'll just sort of stand back and let them have a space. You'd think of yourself, wouldn't you? But here, not just, well, they're drowning, so they can, they can take care of themselves. I'm going to take care of myself. I can't take care of all of them. So I think there's really powerful words and a very brave mind. So I don't know, if I was on the Titanic, I don't know what I would do. I think I do know what I would do. I like to think that I would put everybody else first, but I don't think I would. So this expresses that idea that you really see your own suffering. You see your own samsara. And the most natural reaction when you really see your own samsara is to just like, I've got to get out of here. Once I've got out of here, then I'll help other people. But I can't put others first. I have to get out of this. But here, instead of that, it's like, so everybody else is the same. So how can I put myself first? I'm going to achieve enlightenment so that I'll be able to free all of us. It's amazing, really. And then in particular, so, for this next hour or so, we're going to be looking at the 12 links, which gives us a way of understanding what samsara, what cyclic existence is like. So last time we looked at this image of the Wheel of Life. I actually can't find the one we were looking at, but I've got one anyway in front of me. So we went through most of it. I think we went through the 12 images around the edge, I think. Didn't we? Or not? Didn't get that far. Did we get that far? Can somebody say? I can't hear anybody. Okay, well, anyway, I'm going to assume that I did get to the end there because I seem to remember talking about that last image.
Yes, I remember that we did go through all of the 12 images.
Right, thank
Michael.
you. Okay, thank you, yeah. So that means we went through those 12 around the edge, then the next band in, the big band, then the one inside that, which is the intermediate state, and then the three poisonous minds right in the middle. Right. And then the main thing. So depending upon how you look at those 12, you're talking about the sort of samsaric side, what they call the afflicted side, the side of the mental afflictions. Or it's also talking about, this is how you get out as well. So that would be the Namjan Chogi Tendel, so the 12 links on the pure side. So in other words, there's a way of looking at those 12 so that it's telling you about the truth of suffering, which is the result of the truth of the origin. It's also talking about the truth of the path, which leads to the truth of cessation. And then again, you see the truth of the path and the truth of cessation at the top of the picture. So you've got the picture of the Buddha pointing towards the moon. In the picture that I'm looking at, it's got a Dharma chakra on the far left side, which it would also be the truth of the path, Dharma wheel, truth of the path. But anyway, so the Buddha is pointing at the moon, which represents liberation, and he's saying, go there. So he's not taking you there. He can't take you there. If you say the Buddha can leads us to enlightenment, takes us to enlightenment, and we talk about that, like we do have that language, but actually all you can do is, just like our teachers do for us, they explain things and then you have to practice. All they can do is explain, encourage through their own example, but they can't actually do it for you. Okay, so then going through the 12 links, and they do obviously, they correspond with these 12 images, but now to go through a bit more about what each of them is. So you've got ignorance. So for ignorance, there are some people who say, within Buddhism, in other words, certain, great scholars who say that ignorance means just not knowing. And you might remember that we actually talked about this a little bit in the, previously when going through the mental afflictions according to the middle length stage of the path, Lama Tsongkhapa's middle length Lam Rim. So there are some who say that it just means not knowing. Ignorance just means not knowing. And there are others who say it's the opposite of knowing, in a similar way that an enemy isn't just somebody who isn't your friend. They're the opposite of your friend. They're doing the opposite of what a friend does. So in other words, they're saying within not knowing, so ignorance is a mind that doesn't know, and within not knowing gets things completely wrong, which happens, doesn't it? Quite often, you don't really know, and then you just assume something which is completely untrue, and then you realize that you were wrong, hopefully later. But anyway, you get the idea, I think, right? So yeah, I've lost the pictures. I don't know why it's doing that. I've got this thing at the top of the screen saying leave meeting okay, and I've got a feeling if I click the okay, which I feel like doing, I'm going to leave the meeting. So I better just ignore that. But I can't bring your pictures down for some reason. Right, let's have a look. Pull that down there. Yeah, I don't know if I need to look at the picture for the moment. So anyway, yeah. So most, whether you say whether you belong to the camp that says ignorance means simply not knowing, or you belong to the camp that says ignorance is not just not knowing, but also within not knowing, grasping things in the wrong way. Anyway, you're going to say that what you got the antidote, if you like, the solution is wisdom, the wisdom of understanding the nature of reality. And so therefore, we talk about, well, this is something that'll come up later, talk about the wisdom understanding the selflessness of the person, one's own, like, for example, one's own selfless nature, and the wisdom understanding they call it the selflessness of phenomena, which means, mainly the empty nature of the aggregates, the way that the aggregates don't exist in and of themselves from their own side, because they are dependent. They depend upon other things. If something exists from its own side, it means it doesn't depend upon anything else. So that's ignorance. Then I can't remember what we called it last time, but anyway, often called karmic formations. Karmic formations, which basically means karma. So it means karma. So what that means is then, because of the ignorance, not being able to see things as they really are, grasping them, grasping at the existence, believing in the existence of an I. It doesn't have to be a consciously held belief, right? But somehow, there seems to, whether even if you're like a cow, there seems to be an I. I mean, they don't have language, I guess. I don't know. But there's even if they don't have language, they still have a sense of I, just like we do. You see animals getting angry and greedy and so on like that. It's not just humans. So then on that basis, that's sort of like the fuel for attachment and anger, to rise attachment towards things that we like, anger towards people that, for example, that we see as getting in our way, of getting the happiness we want, harming us, hurting us, and so on. So then, under the control of those mental afflictions, we say things and do things which are harmful to others, harmful to oneself and others, actually. So creating bad karma, doing negative actions. Yeah. So that's the case of negative karma. But even, when we act out of kindness, when there's still the sense of an I that's giving, an I that's helping, and so on, then not just going along still with that feeling of an I that exists independently. Then, even though the action that you do would be a good one, helpful, kind, giving, then at the same time, you're creating a course for still more samsara. Nice samsara, if you can say that, but still samsara. Still something which is people in the world we tend to think of as being nice, happiness, but still flawed, still actually not pure, not real happiness. So we do those actions. Once the action is over, then there's the imprint left on the consciousness, and that's the third link. Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. So that's those three, the first three. Then, as a yeah, we'll get more specific later on because we look at the way that the in more detail at the way that the different links are grouped together, how they're grouped together. So anyway, those you got those three. So then with the consciousness. So anyway, the imprint is left on the consciousness, and generally speaking, when we're talking about consciousness in this context, we're not talking about all kinds of consciousness, right? It's the consciousness that receives the imprint. If you belong to the mind-only school, Chitamanta school, then you would say that that's the mind basis of all, the alaya vijnana. Otherwise, we just say it's the mental consciousness, because the sense consciousnesses don't go on after this life. So what receives the imprint needs to be something that's going to go on until the result is experienced. So it's got to be the mental consciousness, because the sense consciousness don't do that. So mental consciousness. So anyway, although it's not just one consciousness, still we've got the sort of like, let's say, continuity of the consciousness that's changing moment by moment, that's holding that imprint of that karma all the way up until it's experienced. So therefore we talk about causal consciousness in this context of the 12 links, the causal consciousness and the resultant consciousness. So the causal consciousness is the mind, the mental consciousness that first receives that imprint. So you got the karma, then once the karma is over, the imprint is left on the consciousness, and the consciousness that receives that is called the causal consciousness. And that's mainly what we're talking about here. However, so then the rest of the consciousness, that stream of consciousness or continuity of consciousness, all the way up until the result is experienced, that's called the resultant consciousness. So it actually goes all the way up to, like the life which is caused by that karma, right? So that's a consciousness. Okay. Then Mindansuk Kejitu. Then you've got the name and form. So the next few links, I guess, double give right up to the 7th one. These are all describing the life that you're going to experience as a result of that karma, right? So, Mindansuk, name and form, nama rupa in Sanskrit. Name and form. Form is, I mentioned before. So some of this is repetition. Review, if you like, maybe better way of putting it. So yeah, the form refers to your body, your physical body. Then name refers to the other 4 aggregates. So all of the mental aggregates. If you're thinking in terms of body and mind, then the form refers to the body, and the name refers to the mind. And it's not, if you think about it, maybe it makes some sense that they are called name. I'm not quite sure, but it's that there seems to be some sort of sense that it's mainly in relation to the mind that we name a person. Which is an interesting idea, because of course, so many people, I mean, I guess all of us in a way, we're obsessed with our bodies because, we have to keep it healthy and we have to feed it and, get all sorts of enjoyments for it. But still, I don't know if everybody would agree, but I guess we could mostly agree that the main thing is the mind. The main thing is your mind. So anyway, somehow from that point of view, being called name, those aggregates being called name. Okay, so name and form then. So let's say, for example, in the case of being born as a human, as we have at the moment, name and form begins, because these are all like a cause and effect sequence. So, you know, you've got a beginning and an end, right? So where where it begins is at the very moment of conception. It begins at the very moment of conception. So then the six sources refers to which is the link after that. So that would be what, like the fifth of the 12 links. That refers to, generally speaking, the six sources. Source, anyway, Kiji, source. It refers to the six, you could say, sense bases. Like, for example, in the case of the eye. So the eye faculty, or the eye source, the eye sense power, is not the eye that you can feel with your fingers and see. People can see. It's more like some kind of subtle form inside that. Think maybe corresponding to sort of like the nervous system, something like that. And so all of the senses, the five senses, have that, and then the mental sense, that would also be consciousness. That would also be consciousness. So you, technically speaking, as from the moment you're born as a human, you do have a body. It's just a fertilized egg, right? But otherwise, you definitely don't have all senses fully formed, do you? So once they have been fully formed within the womb, at least those faculties are fully developed. It's a bit difficult to say they're really functioning, but anyway, that was something we talked about last week. But anyway, but they are fully formed. There's a point where they're fully formed. Like yeah, I probably it's going to be a time when you see pictures of the baby in the womb. Some of them, it looks like some kind of like monster, and then gradually it looks like a baby, right? Kind of like fetal position, as they call it. So that is probably around that time when the body of the child, it's recognizable as a human baby, and maybe it's you could say it's the point where the baby, I don't know if you'd say fetus anymore, not embryo anymore, is it? But anyway, it's viable. If it was born prematurely, it could still survive. Okay, so then those are the so that's the so even though, as long as we're in cyclic existence, we have our five aggregates. Of course, in the formless realm, you don't have a form aggregate. Having said which, we usually say that, but it seems like it's only in the Chittamatra school they say in the formless realm they have absolutely no form at all, just the mental aggregates, the other four. But apparently, according to all the other schools, in the form realm, you have some kind of subtle form, which is like, because of the fact that you've got the potential to have a physical body sometime in the future. But anyway, be that as it may, again, talking in terms of a human life. So throughout your life, from the beginning of your life to the end of your life, you have five aggregates, right? So you have name and form. But you don't have the name and form link. The name and form link finishes the moment before the six sources start. So from the moment that the six senses are functioning, you've got the link of the six sources, and you no longer have the link of the name and form. Okay. Right. So that's more or less that with the name and form. And then, yeah, so the 6 sources. So you've got the 5. I think this is interesting actually, because I know there was a time when I put quite a bit of effort into, trying to get a clear idea of these 12 links. I'm not saying I've got a clear idea. There's always, questions that come up, which is a good thing, of course. But so so the next one is contact, right? After the 6 sources. If everybody's looking at their picture, it should be, maybe it'll be obvious. Anyway, the 6, after the 6 sources, you've got contact, then feeling. Okay, contact then feeling. So contact, generally speaking, contact means it's a mental factor actually, and it refers to the combination of object, like for example, again, with visual consciousness, so a visual object. Then the faculty, which would be the eye organ, which I mentioned, that subtle form, and the eye consciousness. So when you've got the combination of those three, you have contact. So obviously this contact link is going to, and actually the mental factor contact is what they call an ever-present or omnipresent mental factor, which means that as long as you have consciousness throughout your life, you have contact. So this is talking about specific kind of contact, and is going to be after the 6 senses are fully functional, right? Fully formed, let's say. So in the in the diagram that we were looking at last week, it showed a man and woman lying together. So that's symbolic of, so they're coming together, their union is symbolic of the union, the coming together of the object, faculty, and consciousness, right? However, according to some some explanations I've seen, so the contact would be contact as it occurs once you left the womb. And that makes quite a bit of sense, because even though before that there is the mental factor contact, and even though we were talking about this last week, it seems like the child is sort of like can hear things. It's obviously going to be muffled, and if they can see anything, it's just going to be like just not much, right? Because you're just inside this dark cavity inside your mother's womb. So when you have contact in the sense of actually seeing things in the external world, which is what the senses are made for, right? The faculties, our senses aren't really made for being able to see things in the womb, being able to hear things in the womb, taste things in the womb, and so on, right? They're made for seeing and hearing and experiencing things in the external world. So according to some explanations that I saw, which I quite like, the contact link begins at the moment that you are able to see things and experience things in the external world. So I guess right after you've been born, or soon after, right? When the doctor hits you to make you cry, maybe, I don't know. Maybe from that moment. Yeah, so anyway, that's the contact link. Now, so that's where it begins. So where does it end? Given that we have contact all through our life, when does the contact link end? Well, it ends just before the feeling link begins. So when does the feeling link begin? So although you could say, well, it begins the very next moment after contact, because, immediately you have contact, then that's followed by an experience of the object. So you've got the object, the perception of it, the mind perceiving it and the sense faculty involved in seeing it. Next moment, you're going to have either a pleasant or unpleasant or neutral feeling that you experience relative to that object. But again, and so anyway, contact was symbolized by that picture of the man and woman laying together. Then the feeling link is symbolized by the man with an arrow in his eye, which is a very, obviously very powerful experience of pain. But then in real life, when does it begin? That's the symbolism. But in actual fact, with the 12 links, how does it begin? So again, yes, you could say it's the very next moment after contact has happened. But then in one way, that's a bit funny, because then that means the contact link would only last for like a second, right? So again, according to some teachings or texts that I've seen, which seem to be reliable texts anyway, it begins, the feeling link begins the moment that you experience like the bliss of having sex, bliss of orgasm. And I guess since not everybody has had one, it would be, in other words, puberty. And what's interesting about that is that even though, I mean, of course, we talk about, somebody could have hit puberty and we wouldn't call them an adult. But in general, there's a sense that once you've hit puberty, now you're an adult. You've got an adult's body, at least. You see what I mean? And even though, so, again, for getting some sort of understanding of this, if you think about, next life, if I can't achieve enlightenment this lifetime, blah blah blah, then either it's a pure land, or anyway, we often talk about aspiring for a precious human rebirth, right? And when you think about getting a precious human rebirth, what are you thinking about? You're not thinking about being a fertilized egg, right? That's not what you're aspiring for. It's implicitly you are aspiring for it, but that's not what you're thinking about, right? And you're not thinking about any of that time during in the womb. That's not what you're, when you want to become a human with all of the leisures and endowments that we have at the moment, you're not thinking about being this little fetus in the womb, right? You're not thinking about being born. That's not what you're looking forward to and aspiring for. You're not even aspiring to be that baby that's sleeps, cries, eats, shits, pees, etc. That's not what you're aspiring for. And I think even though, we might have some fond memories of childhood, and there's something quite nice about childhood, as long as you actually survive it, because, it's true, you just don't think of anything except playing. You never think about anything else, never think about, I mean, of course you have to sometimes, but all you're really interested in is playing. You don't think about death. You don't think about anything. You just playing. Anyway, of course, sometimes it goes wrong, bullying and all that. But anyway, you know what I mean. But if I think, seriously, if I want a precious human rebirth, that's not what I'm looking forward to. That's not what I'm aspiring to. I'm aspiring to be an adult with control over my life, so that I can, make decisions about what I do with my life. So from that point of view, it kind of makes sense that this link of feeling, it's from the point where you're fully formed, you've got a fully formed adult body, fully functioning adult body. So then, as far as and also because then the feeling link would go on until the end of your life. And so again, from the moment that you hit puberty, and so I don't know if this is I'm technically right, but it's just my understanding. Once you've hit puberty, you've got this adult body, and that's what you got until you die. So you got feeling link until you die, just like you've got this adult body until you die. So anyway, that's the those links do belong as a group together. So I don't know, maybe it makes sense here to sort of like jump ahead a bit, which is, by which I mean those first three links: ignorance, karmic formations, consciousness. Those are called penjikyu, so the throwing causes, sometimes called maybe propelling causes. They're called propelling because it's somehow they propel you towards a future life. And what is that future life that they propel you towards? That's the name and form, the six sources, contact, feeling, right? And yes, so keep that in mind. So that is the life that's been thrown. So those are the thrown results, the three throwing causes, and then the four thrown results. So those four in on a particular level, and I'm going to make the comparison later on, but you know, that's one way of looking at, or one way of describing the life that's thrown. You start off with your name and form, then gradually the six sources, then contact, feeling. So that's one way of describing the life that's thrown. Now then, so those three causes, the throwing causes, if you think about it, okay, so because of ignorance, we get karma, then the imprint is left on the consciousness. So that imprint is also called a potential, right? So you got the potential to be born somewhere in cyclic existence, let's say as a human, hopefully, if we're thinking of this as describing, you know, what's going to happen to us. But it's just a potential. So it's like a seed. So it's like a karmic seed. It's like a potential. The seed means a potential. Like, so just like you have a seed of a plant, that seed is never going to go into the plant until it's given the moisture and the warmth and the nutrition and so on in the soil for it to gradually sprout and then grow into the plant, right? It'll just stay as a seed until then, right? So in the same way, that karmic seed needs to be certain inner factors. And those are the next three links: craving, grasping, existence. So, yeah. So craving and grasping. Craving and grasping are both types of attachment. So the craving in general, okay, it's sort of what you'd expect in the case of attachment. There's one important point here, though, I think, for me anyway. So craving is a kind of attachment, so we talk about craving for nice experiences, and then craving to be away from, to get away from unpleasant, to avoid or get away from unpleasant experiences. And to my mind, when we talk about craving to be free of something, actually that's aversion. And that's why I would never use the word aversion instead of anger. Some people say attachment and aversion. I think aversion is a type of attachment, and it's this type of attachment, the attachment, the craving that wants to be free from unpleasant experiences. Getting, anger is another thing altogether. So anyway, what else would you call? If we think about attachment, normally we think, like wanting all sorts of nice things. You don't think of not wanting unpleasant things to be a type of attachment. So what would you call that apart from aversion? Seems to me that that's the, you know, that's the word that somehow describes it, or that's a word for not liking unpleasant experiences when they're happening, and not wanting the ones that haven't happened to happen. Aversion. You don't like, when you have aversion for something, you don't like it. That's different from being angry about it. So, like, you know, Brussels sprouts, for me, I don't like them. I really don't like Brussels sprouts. But I'm only going to get angry if you give me a meal of just Brussels sprouts. That might make me angry. But I'm not angry about Brussels sprouts. I just don't like them. The flavor I find completely disgusting. I don't like them. My mum loves them. So when I say, oh my God, that's disgusting, she gets quite annoyed. Anyway, that's how I experienced them. It's just really disgusting flavor. So anyway, yeah, so aversion. So that's just, by the way, anyway. So craving. Then grasping is quite strange, the explanation. It always seems to be explained in the same way. It's a stronger kind of attachment. So it's almost like craving is beginning to nourish that seed, and then it gets stronger, and simply by becoming stronger, it transforms into grasping. So grasping is something stronger than just craving. And then they explain it in this way, and I'll just mention, just because it always comes up, and I don't know, anyway. They talk about 4 types of grasping, and what I wonder is whether these 4 types of grasping are all possibilities for the grasping that's going to nourish that the potential of that karmic seed. So one is grasping out of desire. Grasping out of desire. So this is something. So grasping a desire. When it says grasping out of desire, that might be, I'm not sure about the translation there, although, Gishi Sopa, which is where I'm taking this from, he had a very good grasp of English. He taught in English for many years. So anyway, this is to do with the grasping that we have in the desire realm. So I guess everybody's heard like desire realm, formless realm, right? So we are considered to be in the desire realm. And the meaning of being in the desire realm, you actually see for yourself. Desire realm means the kind of sentient being, is talking about the kind of sentient being like humans, animals, and so on, also desire realm gods, who it's like who spend their whole lives trying to experience nice feelings, blissful feelings, pleasant feelings from the 5 sense objects. So in other words, kind of like always running around trying to experience nice visual forms, hear nice sounds, nice tastes, nice smells, and also tangible, tangible object. I mean, from wearing nice clothes, from being caressed, and so on like that. So yeah, the desire realm, like everybody in the desire realm, that's what they're thinking about like all the time. And although we have to be careful, of course, that the fact that we enjoy those things so much can get out of control, so we end up creating negative karma to get them. But it's kind of the most natural thing in the world. I mean, that's what nourishes us. So it's interesting because in contrast, you have the form realm. Formless realm, of course, they don't have anything physical, but in the form realm, they don't have they don't have all five of those experiences. So they can see, they see, they hear, but no smell or taste. And the reason, I don't know how convincing it is, but anyway, what they say, the reason is because they're not bothered with food, like we do, just eating food, chewing things, and then coming out the other end and all that. They are nourished by the food of concentration. So it's kind of seems like they, from the point of view of somebody whose life is spent just searching for these pleasant objects of the senses, the five senses, the idea that you become a form realm god and then you don't get to taste anymore, you don't get to smell anymore. You wouldn't think that the main reason we need those is because of the fact that when we eat, it's actual physical food, so you need to be able to smell it and you need to be able to taste it. But anyway, so that's what they say. They don't need those because they are nourished by the food of concentration. They get their energy from their meditation, in other words. So that's pretty amazing. So that's form realm, formless realm. Sorry, desire realm and form realm. Desire realm, where we search for, we enjoy, we are nourished by the objects of the five senses. Form realm, they don't have all five. They don't have taste and smell. So then grasping for views. Yeah, grasping for views. So you can imagine that kind of grasping would, be something, because it's grasping, you're grasping for something in samsara. Somehow you're tying yourself to samsara, getting yourself more absorbed into samsara. Then with the for grasping at views, they call it grasping views. So I'm not going to say much, but this actually, if you can remember when we went through the mental afflictions last time, then there's the five to do with which are called the five views, because they're all to do with like a sense of or a perception of what is what reality is, what's real, what you're not so much to do with like emotions and so on, being attached, anger and so on, not those. Somehow you've thought things through and you've concluded this is how things are. So anyway, when it says grasping of views, it means of those five, any four of them apart from the view of the transitory collection. And then for the third one is to do with like mistaken morality and practices. So that's a mistake. Morality means like a mistaken idea about what's right and wrong. And then practices means like, according to certain religions, sacrifice, standing on one leg for ages and ages and burning yourself and so on like that, all sorts of things like that. And then the fourth one, so grasping at a self, so that's the view of the trans collection. And remember, the view of the trans collection is different from ignorance according to some people, because they think ignorance just means not knowing, and then within not knowing, grasping at a self would be what the view of the transitory collection does. Okay, so that's grasping. So that's something to think about. And I think you can understand some of this just by sitting down and really thinking about what it would be like to be dying. So any of us, I don't know, might have had near death experiences. We might have been ill where we thought we were going to die. But whether you have or whether you haven't, there's going to be a time when Well, of course, it could be sudden death. Then you wouldn't get a chance. You can't really imagine that. But you can imagine, hopefully we're all going to live a long life, long, healthy life. But still, there's going to come a time when we are actually dying, right? There are times when you think you're actually dying and you get better, but nevertheless, there is going to be a time when one is actually dying. And you can imagine, maybe some doctors wouldn't tell you, but some doctors, especially if they maybe some kind of understanding that it's good to be prepared, they're going to tell you, so you're dying. So then what goes on in your mind then? You can think in terms of your own experience. You can imagine what it might be like if you're somebody who has spent their whole life rejecting any kind of religious ideas. And in particular, what I mean is, totally total non-acceptance of anything after this life. You can imagine what it would be like for them, but I mean, more to the point, how are you going to feel? You're going to die. You know that you are dying. So what's one thing that's going on in your mind? I'm sure one of them would be, I wish I wasn't dying. I wish I wasn't dying. But anyway, I'm dying. So I'm going to leave this life behind. What kind of attachment would there be to this life? What kind of attachment would there be to your possessions, like your nice, comfortable house, family, and so on? Maybe your family are gathering around you and wailing and making life difficult for you. Who knows? How would you feel? What I'm trying to get at is what's going on in your mind so that what you're doing with your thoughts is nourishing the karma to be born in the next life, to go on to a next life. Because it's not fixed right from the beginning of this life where you're going to go next. You might have spent your life doing mostly good things, but also some bad things. Maybe, depending on who you are, could even be the other way around. Maybe you spend your whole life never doing anything worthwhile, only destructive actions. But anyway, so in one's own case, you know that you weren't bad the whole of your life. So and you've done some good things. So you got some good karma, you got some bad karma. Which one's going to be nourished? So one thing that's very helpful that Geshe Zopa explains, in his Lam Rim teachings, is that actually it's not just craving and grasping that are nourishing that seed. And when that seed has become so well nourished, it's just about to, push you into the next life. It's completely fixed, like it's definitely going to happen. That's called the link of existence, right? So there is another factor involved, he says, which is he describes. I mean, anyway, in the text it says there's a secondary karma. There's a secondary karma that's also involved, and this makes a lot of sense. Actually, I don't know why it isn't in the 12 links, but anyway, he mentions it, and what it refers to is, in the case, so it's a state of mind. That's not very helpful. A positive thought would mean that the karma that's going to be nourished, even though it's still being nourished by attachment, which you would think would only lead to something bad, because of the positive thought, the craving and grasping are going to nourish the potential of a positive karma. So, the craving starts nourishing it, the grasping makes it even stronger, and then once it's been nourished really to the point where it's just about to, give its result, that's called the, that would be like the link of existence. So then that would be the karma of the seed of, or the potential, the imprint of a positive karma that's been nourished and brought to, the point where it's just, it's like the boil that's just about to burst, remember? Or if it's a sort of like negative thought, like getting angry, like being attached to your possessions, maybe, that kind of thing. So you can see why Milarepa expressed the wish to die alone, although it's very helpful, especially I think for us, it'll be helpful to have people around reminding us to keep our minds positive, reminding us of our practice. It would be better to be alone than to be surrounded by people that are just like fighting and screaming and wailing or whatever. So anyway, yeah. So those three then, craving, grasping. So anyway, no, just to finish up that point. That exercise of thinking about what will be going on in your mind that's going to be nourishing some karma or other. Could it be any of these four in our own case? Or if you imagine other people, like imagine what it's like for a Christian when they're dying, a Hindu when they're dying, Muslim when they're dying, or whatever, or an atheist, that kind of thing, could any of these come up? Or, which is a possibility, are these four simply telling us there are these different, in general, these different types of grasping, but that not all four of them are necessarily going to be the grasping, as in the grasping link. So I'm not sure about it. It's something to think about, I think. Anyway, so craving, grasping, and existence. Those three also belong together. They are causes, and you can somehow see how they're causes because they're the ones that are like the the warmth and the moisture and so on that activate and nourish the seed to the point where it's just about to go into the fully grown plant. So what comes after? So those are called accomplishing causes. Maybe a bit of a strange term, but all you need to think is you've got the ignorance, karmic formations, and consciousness, which create the potential, and these three take that potential and make it really happen. So there is like the causes and conditions kind of thing, right? Those first three are involved in creating the cause, which is that potential, and then the conditions which make that cause, make that seed grow. That's the craving, grasping, and existence. And then the last two are the result of that, of those three. And it starts with birth, okay, the 11th link. And so birth refers to the first moment of this life. So even though we call it birth, really it means conception. So that very first moment is called conception. And from that moment onwards, you start aging, and you age and age and age until you get to death, until you die. Whether the death happens in the womb, while you're being born, during infancy, childhood, whatever, whatever time it is that you die. Anyway, all that, from that first moment onwards, you've got the aging and death. But sometimes they're called old age and death. And in fact, old age and death as appropriate is something like the way it's expressed in the Tibet. And what it means is, it doesn't mean that nobody ages, but not everybody gets old. Some people die first, like the Who song. I hope I die before I get old. Now they're old, I'm sure they're quite glad they didn't die before they got old, but anyway. Yeah, so as appropriate, meaning that not everybody gets old. I think that's not exactly the right word, but anyway, you get the point. The way that aging and death belong together is that although from the second moment onwards you're aging, you don't necessarily get to be old, but death for sure is going to happen. So then, so those are the the accomplished results. They are called the accomplished results. And if you're wondering why those would be called the accomplished results and the other ones, you know, name and form, 6 sources, contact, feeling would be called, accomplished results versus the throne results. Well, the thing is, the 4 throne results and the 2 accomplished results run concurrently. And so why make that distinction? All I can say is what it looks like is it's just 2 different ways of looking at a human life, or any life in cyclic existence, actually. But you know, we've been talking about it in terms of a human life. One way of looking at the human life is you're born, you start aging, and then you die. That's one way of looking at it, and that's almost like the ordinary way of looking at it. The sort of exoteric way of looking at it. Just how normally would people can see that this is what happens. You got conception, then gradually, you know, you're heading towards death, basically. Of course, not everybody in the world would think about it in those terms or would want to be reminded of that. But anyway, that's on one level, that's what's happening with your human life, right? Conception, then gradually, moment by moment, heading towards death. Another way of looking at it is the life starts with your 5 aggregates, name and form. Then things gradually form, and you've got the 6 sources, contact, feeling, and that feeling goes on to the end of the life. Different way of looking at the result. And so from this, you can see that of the 12 links, so what is it? You got 3 causes, followed by 4 results, 3 causes, ignorance, karmic formations, consciousness, 3 causes, and those are the throwing causes, followed by 4 results, which are the thrown results, name and form, 6 sources, contact, feeling. Then after that, you got the 3 accomplishing causes, which are craving, grasping, existence, followed by the 2 accomplished results, the birth, then aging and death. So that's how they group together. Any questions? Right. So now a bit more about the birth link, the 11th one. So, oh, sorry, I see there's well, are you intentionally applauding?
No, well, yes, but
Or did you mean to put your hand
he
up?
did raise his hand, but we do applaud you, yes.
Oh,
Right.
I was
Okay, yeah.
wondering, I've had this recurring thought about is for name, okay? Does one consciousness sometimes have multiple versions of the same name as they go through lives?
I don't really understand your question, so can you say a bit more?
Like one like individual consciousness, you know, like I'm Shanna in this life. Could I have versions of that name in previous lives? Is it just kind of connected that way, or is it you're completely
Oh,
different names? Is that part of the name thing, or is it just
I think it can be. It could be. I'm trying to think of something I might have heard, but it. I think it's like not necessarily the case. I think because if you think about it, well, yeah, so why did you come to be called Shana? Your parents decided. They didn't. They might have called you Shana because there was another Shana in their family. They might have just seen it on TV. They might have just really thought, and they've always, one, your mum or your dad or both of them have always wanted to have a child with the name Shana. They just love the name Shana. There can be all sorts of reasons, right? But if you think about it, also, there is some kind of karma involved. It must be quite subtle in a way because it makes some difference. The name you have makes some difference. I know that I have one friend whose teacher, this is a Chinese guy. I won't mention who it was, but anyway, so his teacher must have been a Chinese master, or it might not have been a Chinese master, but maybe somebody who's more like an astrologer, thought that it would be better for him to change his name. So, since then, I'm sure he's got the same name on his driving license and all that, but what everybody calls him now is something different. And in fact, I know a guy in uh, Thailand did the same thing. His teacher told him, now you should use this name. It'll change your karma. So it seems like there is a view that your name makes a difference, and it does make a bit of difference. People, you're called Steve, so people say, "Oh, Stevie Wonder," or things like that. They say things like that, right? People would say that kind of thing. So it seems like your name seems to make a difference, a little bit difference. Like a boy named Sue, like that kind of thing. That would make a big difference in your life, wouldn't it? So it does seem like the name that you're given, even though in one way it's totally what do you call it? Like random. Random in the sense that you're not Shana from the moment of conception. You're only Shana from the point when your parents decide we're going to call you Shana. There's nothing about you that was obliged your parents to call you Shana, from your own side. They might have felt impelled to call you that name, but anybody can be called anything, right? Until they've got their name. So even though there is, in a sense, it's a sort of kind of random isn't exactly the word I'm looking for, but anyway, still it does seem like there is some little bit of karma there. Something to do with karma. I mean, of course, there are some people who would say, of course, everything is karma, but anyway, because it does have a little bit of an effect on your life, maybe even a big effect. The name, you could have the karma to be called by the same name over a series of lives, but of course you're not going to have that same name every life, not even every life that you're born as a woman. So what I'm saying is, it could be that for some reason you have the same name for a series of lives, but I can't imagine the. Well, it's obviously the case that you wouldn't always have the same name. Does that help a bit with your question? Is that what you meant?
it is what I meant? I was just it's just something that had popped into my head a few times, and I always meant to ask you like that, and it seemed a good time because of the name
Yeah,
link, so
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. So now here's something that's anyway, it's all part and parcel of the teaching on the 12 links. So See, when we talk about being born as a human, that's one thing, but there are different kinds of life form in cyclic existence, of course. And so they talk about 4 different types of birth. So there's birth from the womb, which is very obvious, we're very familiar with. Then there's birth from an egg. So chickens are born from eggs, and a lot of other creatures are born from eggs, right? And creatures which are born from an egg are also born from the womb, because the egg comes from the womb of the mother, right? I don't know if there are exceptions. What do they say? The shrimps? No, not shrimps. Seahorses. It's the male that carries the baby. So anyway, there are always some exceptions, right? So anyway, egg-born. Then there's another one which is called birth from warmth and moisture. And now, I don't know if there really is anything which is just born from warmth and moisture. I've got a feeling that that term is used to reflect the fact that there are a lot of insects that just appear where there is warmth and moisture, and there's no awareness of there being eggs there, that there were eggs there. Because of course we know, I mean, I think we know that when you get insects coming out of a pile of, like, I don't know, dog's mess or whatever, that we as always assume that it must be because there were eggs there. Some other insect laid eggs there and then they grew, not just because of warmth and moisture. But yeah, I think so. I think it's like that. But anyway, they do also talk about there's one type of birth which is in Geshe Zoba's book, and also I think almost my whole Buddhist life, I've heard of it translated as miraculous birth. And I don't really know why it's called miraculous birth. The literal, there could be some reason. What's the other kind of miraculous birth that we're used to hearing about? Maybe at Christmas? Supposed to have been what you call the Immaculate Conception. A miracle birth. Anyway, isn't that referred to as a miraculous birth? I'm not sure. Yeah, it is, I think, yeah. So anyway, the Tibetan word Zutikyepa, which means literally birth through entrance. Birth through entering there. And I think even that, it sort of doesn't quite convey the idea. It would be, it would, it would cover the way in which beings are born in the hell realms, where you don't have like mummy and daddy hell beings having hell being babies. It's not like that. You're just born there, and roughly as I remember it, probably not exactly precise, but it's like, so you die. The karma to be born in hell realms has been nourished. You're in the intermediate state. You have a feeling of cold, and then you head towards somewhere warm, and then when you get there, it's a hell realm, and suddenly you're a hell being, kind of thing. You just appear fully formed. So that kind of thing. But then also, the desire realm gods. They talk about being born in a lotus, the center of a lotus. Also, beings in the Pure Lands, born in the center of a closed lotus, and when the lotus opens, then the baby comes out, the child comes out. I guess fully formed. I don't know. I think so. Yeah, I don't know if they have child. No, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to have gods which are children, because that would imply being born from the womb, and I don't think they have that at all. So anyway, this is not a big deal, is it? However, the comment that Geshe-Zopa makes, which is maybe not, I don't find that surprising, because I think I've heard it before, but it is a bit surprising, which is that human beings can have all four of those. I can't remember the examples for all of them, but obviously birth from the womb is not a problem. Birth from an egg, I seem to remember having heard something like that, but I can't remember. I can't think of an example. Birth from moisture, I don't know about that one. And then the entrance birth, or miraculous birth, as it's often called. So that would be like Padmasambhava. So actually, you know what Padmasambhava means? Padmasambhava, Pema June. Padma, Pema, lotus. Sambhava is to do with born, lotus born. So sometimes instead of saying Padmasambhava, they'll say the lotus born, right? The lotus born. So apparently he was born in the middle of a lotus. Well, of course, you know, maybe you're going to be thinking, yeah. But anyway, so according to the teachings, that's how he was born. And so if you believe that, then you can see why you would accept that there is the possibility of being born in that way. But anyway, that's what they say. That's what they say. There are all those four possibilities. Yeah, that's about it, really. So anyway, with the last one, aging and death, yeah, so often, although it's not exactly the 12 links, but comes with the 12 links, it'll say, what was I going to say? Yeah. What did I write down here? Because this is something, it's not really one of the 12, as I say. So after aging, you have to say, in the teaching, it says, you know, from ignorance comes karma, from karma comes consciousness. Oh, I just want to mention one thing. It's almost like a bit sneaky in a way, because in the teachings, often when it talks about the 12 links and about how there's probably is a teaching that talks about, you know, after the first one and second, after the second, third, then fourth, like in that order. But quite often they'll say, because through ignorance, karmic formations, consciousness, etc., up to birth, aging, and death. And that's true, actually, because the first one is definitely ignorance, followed by the karmic formations, followed by consciousness. There is definitely that order. And at the very end, you do end up with, you know, birth and aging and death. But in between, you can see from the explanation this morning that it's not just like that, you know, after the third one comes the fourth one. Well, okay, yeah. After the third one comes the fourth, then the fifth, then the sixth, the seventh, but then eighth, nine, and 10 are before those, right? So actually what you've got is so in terms of the four truths, what do we have? The four truths means you've got the truth. Here we're looking at the first two truths. Later on, we can look at how the 12 links also is talking about the last two truths. So with the two truths, you've got the truth of suffering, the truth of origin, right? What's the truth of origin? Karma and the mental afflictions. So the first, second, and third links, ignorance, karmic formations, consciousness, plus the eighth, ninth, and 10th, craving, grasping, existence, those are the truth of the origin. Those are the truth of the origin, so they are karma and the mental afflictions. Of karma and mental afflictions, actually the first one would be the mental afflictions. So of those 12 links, the afflictions would be the first one, the first one, the 8th and the 9th. So ignorance, craving, and grasping. And then it says, as a double giver, niba jubilee. The second one, which is the karmic formations, and the 10th link, existence, those are karma. And if that sounds a bit of a puzzling expression, try to keep in mind when we say karma, it's the mental fact of intention, something which is taking your mind in a particular direction towards a particular object. Okay. So all of the rest are the truth of suffering. That means name and form, the 6 sources, then the contact feeling, birth, aging, and death. Those are the truth of suffering, which are the result of those truth of origin. Yeah. So anyway, I just finished because I suddenly remembered that I wanted to say that. It's to do with that the order of the 12 links. Okay, so then after birth, so you've got birth, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, anguish, of losing those that you love, and the suffering of dying yourself. So then, yeah, that sort of goes together with it, but for some reason not actually included in separately as 12 links. I think possibly because not everybody that's in samsara and is reborn again in samsara is going to have those experiences. Most of us do. The sorrow, the lamentation, anguish of losing those that you love, the suffering of dying yourself. Some people have a very nice life. They've led a good life, and then then death is quite a peaceful experience. And you do hear that. I've never seen that myself. In the case of my own dad, for example, I was there when he died. I would say it was a very unpleasant death, but he was also personally fairly relaxed about it. But he died of cancer, so it wasn't very nice. And I think about my grandfather, then the sort of the hallucinations, wanted to know where all those little people came from, which nobody else could see, things like that. But you do hear of people having nice deaths, and it's not just Buddhists. Not just Buddhists. I don't know if it's anyway. Yeah, I've heard of people who's like one friend. I can't remember which friend it was now, but I remember her telling me about her mother, who was I guess I shouldn't say staunch Catholic, which doesn't sound very nice actually, but somehow a serious. She was a Catholic, so a lot of what do you call it? Devotion to Mary. Some people say Mary was Tara, emanation of Tara. But anyway, a lot of devotion to Mary and Jesus, and very peaceful death. Very peaceful death. And then I also heard of a friend who died recently, within the last couple of years, I think. So she was a nun. She was a very good nun, very strong practitioner. Died of cancer, and her family talked about how somehow the room where she died was sort of like quite blissful and peaceful, somehow pervaded by that. So you can't tell. So not everybody has the sorrow, lamentation, and so on. Not everybody is death something very painful or unpleasant. But don't just assume it's going to be something nice. It'll be something nice if that's the way you've led your life. And remember, it's mainly the what you've done with your mind during your life that matters the most, I think. So anyway, we can stop there. And well, it's nearly 5:30. So maybe we won't. I don't know if you've got your screen share fixed, but we won't bother anyway. So don't worry. Just dedicate. You can make your own dedications, but anyway, let's dedicate the merits from doing this practice, spending this time talking about the 12 links, as well as all the merits and virtues of past, present, and future of not just oneself, but all other beings. When we say all other beings, that includes all enlightened beings, all the bodhisattvas, includes all of our gurus, so all of their merits because of all that. May all living beings, our kind mothers, quickly, and in fact even immediately, find release from suffering forever and the perfect happiness and bliss of enlightenment. And therefore may our gurus and anybody in the world that's guiding sentient beings in a good direction, may they have long lives, may their dharma wishes be fulfilled, may the especially like His Holiness Jada Rinpoche, Kishingan Rapa, and so on. And then especially may the FPMT be successful in every way, especially during these difficult times, and especially LMB, which continues to be pretty much in a state of crisis. But we're trying anyway. Further success and survival of LMB so that we can lead all sentient beings to that enlightened state. And then think either one whom dedicating, there seems to be an I that's not merely labeled by the mind, existing like the owner, independent of our body and mind, but such an I doesn't exist. Likewise, all the merits that we dedicated, totally non-existent in the way they appear, and also the goals that we dedicated them to. All of this also totally non-existent as it appears. Okay, thank you. There's a chat thing here. I don't know. Thank you for joining. Have a beautiful day. Okay, thank you. Thank you as well. So see you, everybody. See you next week.